Linda.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you? It's nice to see you today.
I know. Such a beautiful morning.
Yes, we have properly entered fall.
Yes, we have. Yes, we
Yeah.
have. I miss the heat though.
I miss warmth. I don't
Okay.
even need it to be hot. I just miss it being warm.
I know. But
But
July for me this year was the perfection.
I know, and we're going to learn why you like heat so much because you have a lot of experience with it. Um, And thank you for being here and telling us your interesting story today, because your story involves going somewhere and then coming back to your place of origin. And so it will be really interesting to hear what your thoughts are on that. Let's start with where you're from and tell us a little bit about that place.
Yeah, sure. I'm here from Riga, from Latvia. I grew up here, a proper city girl, never had any countryside relatives, grandmas to escape the big city from. Um, so yeah, I grew up here in Riga. We had a little summer, let's say summer house in Salkresti where we would go each summer when we were kids. So I went to school here. I played basketball. So all my friends, all my life, everything was always around here. Riga is maybe for the world is not a big city, but for Latvia it is the city because it's the capital and it's also the biggest city. And Latvia, as you might have learned already, it's around 2 million, a little less now. Well, then Riga used to be half of that population. So for you to go places that sometimes would take time. When I grew up, I used to live, when I was smaller, I used to live close to my school. So we would take a bus, we would walk. It's very, very common for Latvian parents to kind of let their children enjoy their independence quite early on. So maybe not first grade when you're 7, but um, I would say starting depends on the child, but starting from when you're 8, 9, you go to school alone, then you change transport, switch buses, all that. My fondest and also probably most annoying memories of my sister always being with me and following me, as she was a year younger, and I was always kind of entrusted with her and to like take her places. And so yeah, it's my so my sister would always be kind of with me. We went to the same school, and I started basketball when I was 7, and they would only take girls when they were 7. Well, then you're in the age of being more independent. But as my sister would always kind of like tag along, then she started when she was 6, so we were kind of always together. It's 3 of us kids, but my brother is 7 years younger, so he was always my baby brother. And then it was kind of weird when he grew up, I think. But but yeah, so my memories about Riga and about going places was always kind of like that I had this independence on like doing things by myself, waiting for the buses, going places, all that, and then having my sister just always there. I would say we're like, as a family, we're like a very kind of close unit, and we get along and we did many things together. Um, my parents had also like passion for sports and outdoors, so that's what we would normally do. We did some traveling as well. We would go to closest foreign countries that are there. It's Lithuania, Estonia, um, maybe Poland, but I don't remember that much. Lithuania probably would be like the first go-to if you wanted to leave the country. But then when it comes to traveling, then I think that started more when I was kind of already in my teens. We would go again basketball, but for like basketball competitions or maybe like a school trip. But I think all that was before we became part, like Latvia became part of European Union. So traveling was a bit more, let's say, challenging. It was the lines on the borders, all the like passport control and all that. Nowadays it's just very, very easy. Just hop on the plane and 2 hours later you are in, I don't know, Germany or Austria or Italy or wherever. So yeah, and then I remember my first experience, probably the only one, but it has stayed with me. We went for this tournament in Denmark, and we had a chance to live in the local family, which was to me so awesome because back then, for me at least, it was the impression that Latvia was kind of like slowly crawling out of this post-Soviet, uh, probably pre-EU phase, and it was just so cool to see how people live in other countries, because it's not the same when you stay in a, I don't know, in a hotel or whatever. So that was really, really cool. And as the first time I saw, there was these like sculptures, like sand sculptures by the beach. It was so impressive to me. Like I had never seen something like that. And it's like, how can you do something like this? And then we kind of like kept in touch a bit, sent a letter, a couple of letters, like here and there, but that never continued. So if for a random reason this family in Denmark somehow listens to this, I want to say hi and thank you. So
Oh,
yeah.
that's a nice little memory. And so you traveled a little bit with school and so on. Talk about when you started to, when you were even more independent, a little bit older, choosing to study in different places and go different
Yeah.
places on your own.
So I think as I grew, also the opportunities grew, and obviously it all depends on the family and your environment, and if you have to travel. As I was in sports, that's what I saw, that it's easy to travel when you're on a sports team, and then it gives you like a chance to see the world. But when I was in university, I chose to do this exchange program, Erasmus, and I went to Germany and I studied there for 6 months, which also was a wonderful, wonderful experience, because that again was the first time me living abroad. And I still think that was what set my heart kind of, on traveling, to be so fond, to have this desire maybe to live somewhere and to try more. I maybe never expected to live abroad for such a long time as I did, as you will hear a little later on. But I think that gave me that perspective that you can go somewhere and you can stay there and you can be part of the culture, and all these people that are people that are united in this desire to travel, let's say, in this kind of like passion to see something, for the languages as well, for how the world opens up once you speak the local language. I think that that's a big one, because when I went to Germany, my German was kind of like high school level. We studied that here in school, but it was very like regular. And when I went there, I suddenly had to like take care of myself and go and apply for, I don't know, it was interesting. It was like all these, like, I remember going to something with the electricity and had to sort out, like, in the local, I don't know, institution, whatever. So all these like independent person things, I had lived with my parents before that, and I never had that opportunity maybe to do that on my own. And it was really, really cool. I really, really enjoyed that experience. I would love to go back to that city. It's right by the France border. It's called Saarbrücken. And it was wonderful, wonderful experience again for me to study in the university in Germany, to have all these international friends and people around me. I still have some that we really keep in touch with. And yeah, I think that was the reason probably why I continued kind of going places. And then once I came back, um, it was it was my university, and then I decided to go to Morocco. And then after those 6 months were done, I returned to Latvia. I think it was my second year in university, so I started the third year, and which was maybe untypical because it was my last year in university, and obviously not many people decide to leave their countries and universities during their last year. But I think we were done with all the like classes, and obviously it was all in person that time, and pre-COVID. But then I think it's all I had to do was write my thesis. So I thought, well, it doesn't matter where I am. I can write them here in Latvia. I can do that in Morocco. Why not? So I went to Morocco for like 3 months. It was a program for volunteers, and it was we lived in Casablanca, and then we worked for this NGO that would go to schools and had like interaction with the local kids, and did like sports programs with them, and something educational, and kind of more like an exposure to a different culture. But obviously that was my first encounter, maybe with, for me, something more exotic. Probably Moroccans wouldn't think that they're exotic, but for me, it was something a bit more like stepping outside of my comfort zone, and leaving Europe. Because even though Europe is like a mix of so many different cultures, right? And countries and languages and all that, in a way, there's still these like certain values and cultural things that we all have in common. But then going to Morocco was really, really interesting. We had a chance to do this camel ride in the desert, and it was so magical. When we arrived to that place, like 10 minutes later, it started to rain, and it's a desert, right? So it never rains there. Obviously, rain for like 10 minutes, 20 tops. But the guy was so grateful. He said that we had brought rain, and then this 20-minute rain now means that for 5 years he will have whatever plants grow in a desert, it will be enough to feed his camels and whatever other like animals he had there. So and then we got to travel around Morocco a bit as well. But this all experience in Morocco again was so, it was so different from what I had seen before, and lived before, and tasted before, and smelled before. It was all these colors, and it was the noise, and it was the taste, and it was so great. And now as I reflect on all these travels and moments in my life, I think what made it all so enjoyable was I always met these people on my way that I could share these experiences. And from my time in Germany, I still have a friend who lives in Spain, and we occasionally keep in touch, but it was such a nice friendship. And then in Morocco, again, there was this girl from Canada, and it was so nice because we, even though our backgrounds were different, meaning we came from different countries, but having her there to be able to enjoy that, and being able to kind of compare all this. Hey, this is Annika. This is my daughter.
That's okay.
So in Morocco, I had this friend from Canada, and it was so great to have her there, because all these exotic things you could somehow talk out with her, and make it all make sense, and make it all seem so magical and beautiful and wonderful. So for me, that was I think that was one of the things why maybe fell in love with the traveling again, because it made me see how you can find people from the other side of the globe, and you can share with them so much, and have so much in common. And it not necessarily you have to grow up, you know, on the same street to be a soulmate in a certain way. So
So it sounds like because it was new and different for both of you, you had this commonality of the fact that you were both out of your original home country, your original comfort zone, and
yes, I think
able
so.
to come together
Yes,
around that.
exactly. And I
Yeah.
think also that kind of prepared me for what came after. Okay, this is my beautiful daughter Annika, who's now hiding. She's always now whenever I have like a work video or conference, if she's at home, I know she will be in there. Can't help it. She can't help it. She is such a little diva.
How did you then decide to go from Morocco to South America?
So it wasn't Morocco, South America. It was Morocco and then back to Latvia.
Mhm.
And as I had mentioned, I had to write my thesis, which obviously with all the magic in Morocco, I didn't work much on. So I had frantically type it all up, but it all went really, really good, and finished the university, graduated. And then was the big decision about what's next. Obviously, the travel bug had bitten me, and I wanted to go somewhere else. Didn't have like a major plan. At first, I knew I wanted to try a Spanish-speaking country just because I loved the language, and I thought, oh, that would be so cool if I spoke Spanish. But didn't have any place in mind. It was a bit of like an economical crisis here in Europe, especially Spain was hit hard. So it wasn't many paid positions that would be easy for someone who's foreign, who doesn't speak language to get. And also Latvia had kind of recently joined EU, so we didn't really have all the rights to work in. There were some restrictions. Let's say like that, because I don't remember what was it, but I knew that it wasn't like that easy just to move and work there as it's now. So so I started to look at the other Spanish speaking countries, which happened to be South America. And then it was with this program that I had an opportunity to travel, and they had a database that I could go through and check out opportunities that were there and what kind of would fit my profile. I think when I chose to go to Colombia and when I chose to go to this school where I would teach English later on, like, as I see it, is like you can't escape from yourself. This idea of me being in a school and teaching and all that, it always felt so right to me. But then being a teacher in Latvia, unfortunately, doesn't have that air of that it's a privileged profession, that it's something desired. At the time when I was just finished school, I didn't, against my maybe like what your heart desires, you just kind of look at what is where you can earn the money and where you can have a good life and all that. But with me going to Colombia, I think that is like a proof of how you cannot escape from yourself, because there I obviously knowing that that I would be working in a school, I chose that and I went there, and it was great. So I came back from Morocco like March 2009. Then it was graduating from the university. And then already by October 2009, I was in Colombia and was working in this school, teaching English to kids. I don't remember. I think it was maybe like 9th grade, something like that. So 15-year-olds. And suddenly, for the first time, I was teaching someone with no teaching experience at all. English not being my first. It was my like first foreign language, but not my native language, and all that was also very, very new to me. I think what again saved me were the people around me. We had a wonderful, wonderful group that all of us lived together. They were all Americans, which also probably helped me with my English, because I was ESL, teaching ESL, and having them there, and just all the, that carefree atmosphere that was in the house. And we lived in this 5-bedroom apartment. It even had a sauna, and it was huge, 2 stories, and each of us had a room, and it was really, really, this go, travel, see the world, but work perfect, like a match of that experience. And that first year also was like a deal breaker in many ways, that like I started to learn Spanish, and by the end of the year I was like, okay, I can get along. It was a funny story also about learning Spanish. My friend Eva, she spoke Spanish before coming to Colombia, so she was always helping me survive, do things, whatever. And after like 3 months of us being there, we were in this coffee place, and I asked her to ask for water for me, and she just turned to me and she said, un vaso de agua, and kind of like pushed me to ask. So I would ask for myself, and I was like, okay, now it's time for me to learn Spanish. And I did. I didn't go to any courses. I just kind of like, I learned it on the streets. But on the streets was as I was walking from my apartment to the school. I had audio classes, and I would just like repeat what I was hearing, and I would try to interact with people. And in Colombia, many people speak English, but then many people don't. So this is what I believe, that if you learn the local language, also many doors of opportunities and friendships and all these much better experiences kind of open up for you, because then you're being able to interact in the local language, even if it's very basic, even if it's just wrong grammatical forms, whatever. When I started speaking Spanish, I would only speak in present, and I would say, so, or if I wanted to say something about tomorrow, I would say, I don't know, I would say, I go there yesterday, or I go there tomorrow. I didn't even know how to say I went or I will go, but I knew I go, and I knew yesterday, and I knew tomorrow. So putting it all together, so somehow survived. And so I think that's very, very important. For me, language is number one tool for integration. Once you speak the language, I think even the hardest shells start to open.
Mm-hmm.
So yes.
And tell us a little bit, before you get into how you stayed in Colombia,
Yeah.
can you tell us and describe it a little bit more? So what did it look like? How was that maybe compared to some of the other places you had been?
Okay.
What were the things
Sure.
that stood out to you as someone who hadn't grown up there?
Okay, sure. So, well, first of all, Colombia is a big country, and it's also um, it's 5 regions, and each of these regions is very different. When I first arrived, I was in the in the middle of the country, kind of more up in the mountains. It's called Manizales, and people there are in many ways different from what I experienced in Cartagena. So to give my general impression about Colombia is in a way difficult because it is very, very different. Food, the people, even the way of speaking.
Mhm.
I'm lucky that where I started to learn Spanish, they speak much slower, because in Cartagena they speak so super fast, and they kind of like cut the end of the word, and it's so hard to understand unless you speak Spanish. So it's good that my learning of Spanish started in the other city. But if I have to tell you about Colombia in general, I can't not compare it to Latvia, obviously, but I will tell it with these 2 stories. So first is about the what's it called? When people stand close, like the
Mm.
personal space,
Mhm.
So my first story is about personal space. If in Latvia, the personal space is you extend your arm, and then the other person extends their arm, and then maybe those 2 arms extended would make a Latvian feel comfortable because you're not in their personal space. Then in Colombia, people are, their personal space is like 2 fingers, maybe. They stand so close to you. And as I had just recently arrived to Manizales and was in this high school or teaching English, and I had all these, let's say 15-year-olds, I don't know how they were at the moment. So, but all these 15-year-olds, just 25 of them, and I'm just me there. And they're like, how I see it, maybe it wasn't like that, but how I see it is them coming towards me, and they just like come and come and come, and they talk to you, so like so close as your noses would touch. It's just like the personal space. There's no such term as personal space. Everyone hugs, everyone touches, everyone is just always into each other's faces. When you stand in a grocery store in a line, it's very common that you stand and a Colombian stands like right next to you, and another one, they would put their hands on your cart even. So that's how close they are, right? In Latvia, we have this joke that it's the 2 meter distance, and now that all the restrictions are being lifted, they say, well, oh, finally, we don't have to keep that 2 meter distance. We can go back to 5 meters again. So that the second story is about the noise and the silence. In Latvia, silence is a value. Please keep quiet. Please don't scream. Just music is so quiet. I don't know. We have these concerts for silence, and silence above all. And if someone is napping, you're very quiet, not to disturb them. And God forbid you would disturb your neighbors with the noise. Obviously, each person is different, but in general, for Latvian culture, silence is such an important thing. Whereas in Colombia, noise is the value. It's such a live, vibrant, loud country, right? They would play their music, and the neighbor would play their music, and it doesn't matter that it overlaps and you cannot understand. If it's a family get together with all the cousins and grandmas and aunts and uncles, all kinds of ages and all generations together, a must is this huge speaker that blasts music, and you can't hear the person next to you saying anything because you have the music. It's so common to sell things as you walk down the street and you scream out loud, empanadas, uvas, whatever they're trying to sell. They even, for New Year's, there's this tradition that you have to eat 12 grapes. And so starting from 20 whatever of December, there are these men who like, they're pulling their carts and they have a microphone and they like scream in it. So the sound from this huge speaker comes out, and they're just like, uvas, uvas grandes, deliciosas. And they, and obviously if you're at home, you can not hear it. Cars honk as people pass by, or just because of whatever. People talk loud, people sing. If you're taking a nap, no one cares about it. There's life to live. So these probably are the biggest contrasts, I would say, and probably describe, in my opinion, both countries the best. So silence and distance versus noise and no distance at all.
Closeness.
Right? Closeness, yes. And you can tell that in the human interaction, right? People in Colombia are very open, direct. They're loud. They would tell you what they think. They would throw all these like loud parties, no matter if it's for the grandma who turns 90 or for a 1-year-old, right? It's just part of their energy, you know. And then when I would come back to Latvia for my like yearly, visit, then those two things probably would like kind of surprise me the most. How when I'm here I miss it, but how I also appreciate it, the way things are. So
you kind of
yes.
see both perspectives.
Yes.
And can enjoy both perspectives.
Yes.
And so tell us how you ended up staying in Colombia, because it doesn't sound like you moved there with the intention of being there as long as you were.
No. I moved there with an intention to be there for 1 year and then come back and start my adult life, right? But then my year in Manizales was over. And it was a wonderful experience again. And I had this friend, Eva, that I told you about, who was my reason to start learning Spanish. It was my friend Eva who encouraged me to go to Cartagena. And she said, you have to come here. It's just so different. Again, this music and food and people and everything. Just to see Colombia from a different side. Because even though we traveled quite a lot during this first year, we also worked full time. So what we spoke about before, right? You get that impression about the real place when you spend a bit more than just a couple of days there. And I had gone to Cartagena during my Christmas vacation during my first year, and I really liked it. What I remember the most was that it was really hot there, and that people spoke very fast Spanish there. But that was like, I never had any ideas more about it. And then my friend said, well, come. And I had this return ticket. So I went first to Manizales, picked all my stuff up from there, and went to Cartagena. At first, I didn't like it. It was very hot. I thought that getting somehow like a job there would be easier, but it didn't happen magically in the first 2 days. So it was kind of like, oh, this is not for me and whatever. But then it was actually our first like night out. I arrived on a Monday, and on a Friday we went to this concert, and I was kind of upset and maybe thought, why had I come again? Why did I like decide to continue in Colombia? Maybe I should have stayed in Latvia or Europe or tried something else. So I wasn't really convinced about my decision. So I was reluctant to go out, and I didn't really have any other friends than my friend Eva. But she's a very charismatic person, and she's very like bubbly and optimistic, and she started, well, come on, let's go out, let's kind of not, don't focus on the don'ts, right? So so we went out, we went to this concert, and something happened there. This tall, handsome man came up to me and started talking to me. And in my broken Spanish, after just 1 year of kind of like speaking it, even less than a year, maybe like 6 months, 7 months, whatever. And we started talking, and we exchanged numbers, and 4 years later we got married, and we have 2 children, and basically he was the reason why I decided to stay in Colombia. So after I graduated from university, I already before that, but I knew that I wanted to kind of extend being on adventures and travel a bit, and I really wanted to learn Spanish for some reason. I thought that sounds beautiful. I thought that it's a useful language, and so at first I looked for some opportunities in Spain, because obviously that's much closer to Latvia. But that was that time was that there was like an economical crisis all over Europe, and Latvia too, and especially in Spain, and there were not many opportunities, and I wasn't looking for a volunteer position this time, and I don't think Latvians could just move to Spain just then to start working. There were still some like restrictions, as it was like relatively recently that we had joined EU. So I went to Colombia. It also wasn't like a, like that I had decided to go to Colombia. It was just one of the options that I had, and it seemed interesting enough. It was a school where I could work, and everything just somehow fell into place, and it was relatively easy to move across the ocean, getting all the visas and all the permissions and stuff. And October 2009, I moved to Colombia. For a year, I lived in Manizales, which is a city in the mountains, and I worked in a school there. I taught English to younger kids, older kids, being like a teacher assistant, and then not an assistant anymore. And that was like also an interesting experience when you have never taught before, and then you're suddenly kind of like thrown into the ocean and just like told, well, swim. Then you either swim or you drown. Well, I swam, and I liked it. So it was my first experience teaching, my first year like properly abroad, the full year. Didn't speak Spanish, learned Spanish, didn't find it that difficult, but also I didn't attend any courses. Maybe I should have. That would have made the process maybe easier, but my Spanish is like street Spanish, which means that I just learned it talking, conversing with my friends, and then I had this audio that I would listen as I would walk to work. And yes, and then when this year was over, I had a friend, still have, Eva. She moved to Cartagena. She had a job offer there, and she said, well, you have to come to Cartagena. It's a completely different culture, vibe, music, food, people, everything. And I had been to Cartagena for a short trip, like a week long maybe. And what I remember was that it was very hot, and people spoke different Spanish, meaning that it was very, very fast compared to the interior of the country. And yeah, so I just said yes, let's go on this adventure. I went back to Latvia, returned to Colombia. So went back to Latvia for a vacation, returned to Colombia, and then moved all my stuff, everything to Cartagena without any job, anything, just hoping that so after a year I would have this experience and would know how to do it. At first I didn't like it. It wasn't as easy I thought it would be. It wasn't. Cartagena is much more touristic city, so obviously much more, I don't know, noise, and culturally it was different. Also, it's full of tourists and foreigners in general, so obviously all the positions where they need an English teacher firstly go to the natives. And but still, they, if you're foreign looking, they still assume that you're native speaker, and that kind of worked in my favor. And I did find a job, but in general, that's not the reason why I stayed. Interestingly enough, the first week, the first night out, I met this man whose name is Carlos, and then one date led to another, and that led to a wedding and two beautiful babies, and us being together already for 10 years now. So basically, he was the reason why I stayed. It was never meant to be like a long-term adventure again. I had my adventure for the first year, and now it was just supposed to be like this tale of the adventure,
Yeah, maybe
Dragon's
another
Tale.
year or so.
Yeah, I was even thinking of just 6 months, but yeah, it turned into 10 years. I ended up working in this international school there for girls, and I worked there for almost 8 years in total. That was really, really interesting and good experience as well, because obviously there I shaped my teaching ways and actually gained like proper experience, because before that it was more maybe me not taking it seriously enough, because it was always adventure, and now this was my life. So I kind of climbed the positions also in the school. I started as an English teacher, and then I was like a grade teacher. They call it like directora del grupo. So you're like in charge of a group, and I was in charge of the whole English team. So when I left, I had kind of like done it all, and it was really, really cool. Like I'm so grateful and thankful for that experience, because obviously it showed me the beauty, and also, I don't know, maybe the hardships of teaching jobs and being a teacher and being a full-time teacher, and what it implies, that it's not only teaching your subject, but just being your heart and soul in, and having these young people around you and depending on you and listening to you and wanting your advice and waiting for you to arrive just to say good morning because you're the person they trust. So that really is such a responsible, meaningful thing you can do in your life. So for me, that was wonderful. And so in total, it was 10 years apart from school. Obviously, I mentioned the babies. So we have Mateo, he's 7 now. So he was born in Cartagena, and then Annika came 3 years later. They both were born in Cartagena. They went to kindergarten there, so they are little Colombian babies that now have been they have this Colombian side and Latvian side, and now living in Latvia, they both say that they are Colombians, and they have this Caribe in them. So that's really nice too.
So you told us a little bit about Colombia. You told us about your experience there and some of your reflections about how it felt as a Latvian going to Colombia. So tell us a little bit about then Colombia back to Latvia and kind of what you noticed there, what reflections you had going the other direction.
Sure. I think you can, it's always like that, this thing that we as humans have, that we always compare things, and it's probably, you can compare two completely different cultures.
Right.
But still, obviously, if Latvia is silence, then Colombia is noise and this vibrant energy. If Latvia is more introvert, then Colombia is extrovert. If Cartagena is heat and humidity and plus 35 every day, then Latvia, well, summers are beautiful, but we all know how the winters are, and maybe they're not the Arctic, but for someone who has lived in Colombia, especially in Caribe for 10 years, or for my husband who has lived there his whole life, coming to this climate again is a challenge. Obviously, that would be the first thing that comes to my mind. Moving back, the hardest thing definitely has been the weather. It's cold. It's you don't get that much sun. Winters are very dark. Summers are beautiful. Then you just soak up all the energy. And in Cartagena, or in Colombia in general, December is like the month, because it's Christmas and it's such a nice weather, and it's everyone takes their vacation that time. So for Latvia, summer is the December of Colombia, when everyone just enjoys life and soaks up this energy for the rest of the year. But obviously, I would say the first thing that stands out and makes our life a bit more challenging is definitely the weather. I would also say that it's somehow this peace versus constant energy. Latvia is much more peaceful, and in many situations that's really nice. You get kind of time to maybe think things through. There's not so much pressure from the society. It's very competitive there, because there's just so many people. It's full-on capitalism. It's either you're all in or nothing. Then here, this, like, the society is built differently. The social structures are different. The school systems, healthcare, everything is much more kind of quieter. It's just always like, if I have to compare, it's the sound, but it also is like this inner feeling. Here, I feel you have more, I don't know, maybe time and be like at peace with your decisions. There's not so much rush. So I would say that for us, we came to Latvia in 2019, and then it wasn't our, let's say, like, we didn't come here to stay. We had different plans, but then those plans didn't work out exactly like right away. And then we decided to stay and wait out a bit until we kind of figure things out. And then obviously COVID started, and that again changed our plans, because to me, I think Latvia is the best place to kind of be during the COVID times. Now, obviously, the restrictions again, but still, you don't have to be in fear that it's so many people, crowded, that you cannot control it. Maybe I don't know, everyone speaks about hospital capacities and stuff. Obviously, it's more people there are, the more capacity there is, but also the more competition for whatever medical attention. So to me, this has been really kind of living out a small dream to be back with my family, to be back here as an adult as well, because I left right after university. And then, well, we can argue what is an adult and what is still somehow a child. And I was working back then. I had finished my university, but still in many ways, I was not living like a very independent life. I know it's different for everyone, but for me, that was that. And maybe one of the things why I left was because I wanted to try that. And it's just very easy when you're abroad and on your own, you just kind of have to do it, right? And then coming back here already with my kids, and I don't know, had to figure out all the school systems, and it was kind of like, I'm sorry, I was kind of like a foreigner as well, you know, because there were so many unknowns. Latvia had changed so much. It had been 10 years of like growth, and many processes had changed and many advances, and everything was, I don't know, electronic, you know, and I didn't have those accesses to everything. I don't know, even paying for a, you know, when you park a car in the city, I didn't have my card here to pay for it. I had to still go to the machine and had to figure it all out, you know. And just like silly little things, but I did feel like a foreigner who speaks the language, but I did feel like a foreigner for the first 6 months, probably, that how long it took me for it to adapt.
Because none of these processes were things that you needed to do or worry about or think about when you were younger, when you were in university, when you were in school. You didn't have to think about those types of things, those logistics.
Definitely.
Those,
Well, maybe I had to park the car, but I didn't have to enroll my kids in schools, and I didn't have to take them to the family doctor, and didn't have to navigate all that. Yeah,
all those systems.
Sure.
Yeah. And anything else you want to say about, so you talked a little bit about there's this sense of familiarity. So your family is here, the language is familiar, the way, maybe the mindset is somewhat familiar, but you're also saying there are these things that stood out as changes. Are there any other things that you want to kind of speak to, of things you noticed with fresh eyes when you came back?
I think definitely kind of relearning what Latvia is through the eyes of my husband has been very, very interesting, because obviously for all my experience abroad, I'm still from here, and then I can't see this as something new because I have been here, maybe not my whole life, but I have been here long enough for this not to be new. Right. And then having my husband by my side and kind of pointing out at these small things, it's really, really interesting. So I think that kind of peace versus this constant moving is one of his observations. Also job wise, he says that in Colombia you can never stop. Like there's always a certain opportunity you have to take, and always something that you might miss out on, and if you don't do it right away, that hour, that day, that minute, there's always someone else who will go and grab it. In Latvia, as I said, less competition because, well, not that many people, and maybe different kind of attitudes. So that was one thing he pointed out.
Great. So are there any final thoughts that you'd like to share?
Well, for those who are from another country and living here in Latvia, I just want to kind of encourage you to not maybe get desperate when you don't find the things that you're used to in your own countries, and maybe you feel like they are a must or such an obvious thing. There was this phrase that came to me, and I said to someone who's foreign, and they appreciated so much because it just resonated. But just because you don't see something here doesn't mean it's not there. Sometimes here in Latvia, you have to look for things, ask about them, and then, because I think there's so many resources and just so much going on, but not everything is always visible to the public eye right away. That would be one thing. And if you are someone who is thinking on going to Colombia, do it. It's such a wonderful, wonderful country. Don't listen too much what's going on the news and this general image that a country has. Obviously, it's not there. It's there for a reason, but it's not everywhere. And I think Colombia can change your life for better, even if it's just a short trip. It has this beautiful energy, and it's full of sun and warmth and friendly people. So it's really, really worth to go there and enjoy that.
And Latvians who are thinking about coming back to Latvia, what would you say to
Latvians are
them?
thinking, yes.
Because you have that experience too.
I know. I think it's worth it. But I would say that when you come back, be flexible. Don't just set your heart or mind on one thing. Plans change. Latvia is a great country as well, with so much potential. And I think we all just have to give a chance to Latvia, because sometimes it's so easy to overlook this small and beautiful and on winter such cold country that doesn't have that many inhabitants, and many are leaving. And economically, you see just so much more opportunity so close to Latvia, and it's so easy to leave, but it's also very easy to stay and also very easy to live here. So just have, give another chance to Latvia.
Great. Well, thank you so much for sharing a little bit about your story, kind of an overview of your story, and how interesting to be able to also reflect on this. But your story is somewhat intentional, but unintentionally, maybe in length of time, going and living abroad, and then again, kind of unintentionally around length of time, coming back and living in Latvia, and all of the things that you've gained from both experiences. So thank you for sharing that with us.
You're very welcome. I hope you find it interesting enough, and I hope you enjoyed my story.